drama, and we are going to talk about something that is near and dear to both of our hearts before we wrap this show up. The ending / rebooting / we're not quite sure what's happening with New Japan Strong, but we have both been faithful followers of it. We've watched New Japan shows side by side together in real life, watched New Japan live events in San Jose together. So he and I, Justin, are uniquely qualified to talk about what worked, what didn't, what we hope to see if New Japan Strong comes back in the future. Justin, you are the Wrestling Observer newsletter official correspondent and do all the TV reports for New Japan Strong. How long have you been doing that?
I have written every single report on every single episode since its birth.
Oh, so you're not qualified to talk about this at all?
I think I'm more qualified than the wrestlers. I think I've seen more shows than they have. Definitely some of them. But it's okay because, well, all right, I'll tell you how I got started because this wasn't officially supposed to be a show. I thought this was going to be a 4-week special. So Josh Nason emailed me. It was around the pandemic time. It was like summer. And before that, I was covering Ring of Honor because they were doing a lot of pay-per-views. I didn't do the TV. They had like house show kind of things on pay-per-view and stuff like that. So I was covering that and things shut down and everything changed. And then in July, New Japan said, we're going to do 4 episodes of this show at somewhere in California. And
down like Oceanside.
Something like that. It was a brief taping and it really felt like, okay, because the 3 main young lions that were there, we got Carl Fredericks, Clark Connors, and Alex Coughlin, they were like ready to go. It was really because they had just went to Japan the year before. I think Gabriel Kidd went as well. Mm-hmm. Looked great. Like these guys were pretty much, you could say they were ready to start being, sent out, given gimmicks. Pandemic screwed everything up. So I thought, to me, New Japan Strong seemed like a great vehicle for these new guys because they can't go to Japan because nobody can go to Japan right now. And that's what I thought it was going to be, just maybe like a short summer, like we're going to do some shows. We're going to highlight these young lions, build them up. And what it turned into was it turned into like a small, like West Coast territory. Like it's a West Coast indie almost to me because of how regularly they run and the type of talent they use. They use a lot of good local LA and now up to like Pacific Northwest, like West Coast talent. So it went from being what I thought was a nice showcase show for those those famed 3 young lions together to more of a West Coast outlet for New Japan to show their stuff, to work with AEW and Impact and a nice apolitical platform and share talent. And also recently, I thought it's been really cool that they've been bringing in guys from CMLL. I got to see Negro Casas there. I got to see they had Atlantis Jr. was there. Virus.
Was Volador there?
No.
I was thinking I was trying to think of names that were like just flashing in my head as I was watching those shows in the last couple months.
Mascara Dorado's a regular there. So there's always like an eclectic mix of talent. As a show, it's no matter what. And from the beginning to the end, I can't say there's ever been like, wow, this episode sucks. Not even close. I can't say that. Like you watch an episode of Raw, you watch an episode of whatever. Sorry, Rob, but sometimes it just sucks. What can I say? And it's long too. And thankfully, these episodes of New Japan Strong, they keep people interested because
they're an hour. I think there was like 5 episodes throughout the entire time that ever went over an hour.
You know what's funny is you brought up San Jose. That night was special because we watched Full Gear that night, which was extra long.
Yep.
And we watched it in 2 pieces because we went to the New Japan show in San Jose.
We stopped.
And then we watched the second half. And then I went back to Garrett's. And then I did the New Japan Strong from Philadelphia report because it was Saturday. And that was one of the only episodes that was close to 2 hours. That was one of the extended episodes.
Of course,
of
they did
all
that
the times. Yeah, you said like the only 5 times they've ever done it. It was the one night where I had to watch like 17 hours of wrestling, but I got it in. It was late, but it was all good. It was where it was interesting because it was when Filthy. It was the first time he cut Fred Rosser's hair and ate some of it.
Oh, that New Japan Strong episode.
Yes, the first time he did it in Philly.
I remember that night as being you and I had a conversation about heels wearing white
White boots, the
and
white boots
white
theory.
boots, and then that was the last time that Jay White lost a singles match stateside, and it was the last time Jay White lost a singles match at
He
all
lost
until
that to
Wrestle
Ishii,
Kingdom.
huh?
He
I
lost
remember.
to Ishii the never open weight title.
Yeah, I remember that was a good match, but I remember feeling so worn out that maybe I didn't enjoy it as much as
We were all pretty tired because we had already we were 6 hours in on wrestling when everyone else was 4 hours in, and we knew we had more going. So it was just kind of like
yeah.
we weren't able to appreciate it, but we were also really just having a good time on that show. That
It was
also, I
good.
think that was Buddy Murphy and Okada.
That was right. It was Buddy Murphy's New Japan debut.
So we
That was
fell
the
off of
night.
the strong talk, but it
Oh
one
yeah,
of those
no,
the thing about
strong characters.
The thing about Strong is that they were able to create stars that weren't going to have an opportunity otherwise. So you had guys like Filthy Tom and Fred Rosser who were able to take the ball and roll with it or run with it because they weren't within the Young Lions system. And I think that might have been one of the biggest drawbacks of that show is that they weren't able to get all the Young Lions where they needed to go. You know, you got Carl Fredericks now with supposedly an NXT. That looks like the next place for him. But they could have done better in getting those guys to the next level. But given the fact that it was a pandemic, the fact that this was developed during a pandemic to be a pandemic-based show, and now that we are no longer as much in a pandemic, this is an opportunity to retool the show if they're going to retool it. We've heard a number of different things based off of the Hiroshi Tanahashi tweet and the Obari tweet about Strong that gives an indication that it's going away, but not forever. So we talked privately beforehand about some theories about how they could bring it back and what they could do to be different. You mentioned more women's matches on the show. So do you want to expound on your thoughts on that?
That's kind of what I was thinking when I heard about this. Was I figured that they had this IWGP title, women's title, and it's generally seems like it's going to be this thing that's supposed to be defended overseas. It's not going to be as regular part of the Stardom program they have, because they have the other belts. They have the red belt and the white belt. So this might be a Bushiroad type situation where you can have the belt defended over in the States, and it could be on a new show where New Japan Stardom centric, Stardom adjacent wrestlers are featured, but it's not a Stardom show. It's a New Japan Bushiroad production. I think this maybe we'll see a little more Sasha Banks, because she's not technically a Stardom wrestler. She's under a Bushiroad New Japan contract, because Stardom hasn't had the money to pay somebody like Sasha Banks. So now if she was Sasha Banks, like she's going to be wrestling in San Jose soon, like next month, probably for that title. So maybe is that going to be on a New Japan Strong? Are they going to save matches for that just for specials alone? I don't know. It's all speculation now, but I felt like they were going to restructure the show to incorporate more of the women's matches, either New Japan Bushiroad sponsored, Stardom adjacent. We'll see. But I mean, what people should, I think, can grab a lot from the New Japan Strong show was a great showcase of not just like the hot young talent, because there's a lot of flavors of the month, right? There are a lot of solid guys who I saw wrestle week after week after week and improve in slow, honest increments. Guys like Barrett Brown, the DKC, Danny Limelight,
Royce Isaacs, and Jor-El Nelson, for example. Like
having regular opponents. I think one of the things about getting better at wrestling seems to be like the main thing you need to do is just do it as much as possible in front of people in a real setting. And during that time, it was hard to do that because the world was on pause. And I thought New Japan Strong gave a lot of guys chances to just show what they got, or gave other guys, like somebody like Bateman, who I know has been around for a while. I really got to see him like in matches that wasn't just 5 minutes or 10 minutes or wasn't a tag. I got to see the craft. got to see guys like Matt Raywalt wrestle in and out. Like, when else would I be able to watch that if you're not watching everything? You
Let
know
me
what I
ask you
mean?
this. Let me ask you this. Do you think we'll ever see Stray Dog Army in New Japan proper?
That's a good question. I don't know. There are a couple. So they set it up in New Japan. They have their own. They have the Team Filthy.
Mm-hmm.
They got TMDK, which is
Mhm.
kind of going through change, and they got Stray Dog Army. They had the New Japan Young Lion Dojo
Stable
people.
group of guys,
Yeah.
just basically
United Empire.
Yes.
So that's generally it's kind of the same. Stray Dog Army. I don't know. Would it be cool? Yeah, absolutely. Especially for a tour like a coming up. Like you mentioned, the Best of the Super Juniors tour is usually in springtime. It's always good to bring over some extra non-juniors talent. Like I remember one year they brought over Brody King because
Right.
because Marty Skrull was in it, but they had his old group, so they did some cool tag matches. Might be some opportunities for any of those guys to go over, but I like seeing those guys on other shows around the States as well. I don't know what will happen with them, and I don't know what the deal is with the strong wrestlers unless they're part of the New Japan dojo already. I think we'll see those dojo people in New Japan proper before outsiders, but again, I don't know. I'm just speculating.
Is there a scenario to you that you would be open to a joint production between AEW or Ring of Honor and New Japan in which they do some type of show with shared talent between 2 or 3 of those promotions?
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
sharing talent, it's like, I think it's a huge part of keeping wrestling fresh without having crazy dogmatic rules about not appearing on certain broadcasts. For young talent, there need to be as many options out there as possible. That will be how you kind of even out the economy or landscape. So, yeah, of course, if there's always people need to look for win-wins in wrestling and not win-lose, because win-lose, it'll take you to a point where you can't really move from there.
Okay, so if you were to make that show accessible, where would you make it accessible to watch? Would you make it accessible on Honor Club, New Japan World, and Fight to Purchase? Would you do it only on New Japan World and Honor Club, only Honor Club, or only New Japan World?
The only way to avoid politics is if you put it on a neutral platform like Fight, because whichever platform you put it on, that's going to get a lot of money. And well, not a lot of money, but I'm just saying that's going to get where the money and revenue from the show is going to come from. Part of it's going to come from the stream. Where is that money going to go? Does the majority go to company X, company Y? Like how do you divide the money? That depends on, or that would be what makes it depend on the result.
Yeah, so I was thinking if they're both approximately $10 for a monthly service, and it was just a matter of what preference of what service the person wanted to use. There's entirely going to be people that are going to be double dipping and getting both and probably don't want to have both services if they're getting, with the overlap. So I'm trying to figure out what the most feasible way going forward, if they were to operate on their own, if they were to operate in cooperation with other promotions, what's best for New Japan. Like AEW or Ring of Honor, in this conversation, be personally inconsequential. It really comes down to what is the best scenario for New Japan to propose a new version of Strong that best serves their interest as a company.
It has to be a New Japan Strong, or New Japan World.
Yeah, so that's why I'm just like, I'm not super into the idea of a joint show if it can't be on New Japan World, because I don't see the benefit of that inherently or intrinsically for New Japan. But I'm also not totally an expert for how the TV and production and
but
all
then
that
it's
works.
suddenly it's not special. If there's a working deal between the two companies, then it's not special when somebody comes over. It's like, well, they have a deal. So
I agree. And like, you have Omega as the one guy from AEW going over to New Japan makes it far more valuable of like a give and take than sending 10 guys in the mid card and telling you this is important.
Yeah, I would reverse. I would choose a select a limited amount of people to be your wild card players who can travel to different promotions without any consequences, like Kenny. Okay, Kenny especially, maybe he can go to the New Japan show and he can go to AEW and Impact, and it's fresh because it's Kenny. He's big enough, and
Right.
if it's just him doing it with Don Callis, that's cool. But if half the roster is just labeled with a new TV title name, nobody ever buys that shit.
Yeah.
ECW, it's like, how could anybody? It looked like WWE. It's why are you calling it something different? It's the same. It's like it's called. You can't take a Big Mac and just put a different name on it. Like, hey, it's a Whopper.
Exactly. You can't put a Whopper wrapper.
Same.
Yeah,
it's different. So I think that's a part of it. I think, yeah, why not?
Fair enough.